Hi everyone. Welcome to this review of 2024 and what I learned about living and being in a camper van. So, of course, I'm recording this now from my house. It's really cold and I need to be grounded for the next month or so before I go on my next trip. But I thought I'd share with you, as I do in December, review the whole year about what's gone well, what I've enjoyed, of all the different activities that I'm involved with, and also some things that can help people who are considering getting a camper van. So, my name's Melanie Gabbi, and I'm a mental health and wellbeing consultant, work as a psychotherapist and coach, online mostly, a yoga and meditation teacher, and bought my van earlier this year because I was also going to spend more time going to festivals and traveling around the UK because we've got some amazing places that we can visit. And the idea of getting a camper van was really about being able to tap into that innate joy of travel and freedom that I've had over the years. So I wanted to share some of the top things that I've learned as I've reviewed that experience. So I bought my van, I think it was around January actually, and I was quite nervous. I'd spent about 9 months researching all of the different types of vans that you can get, ones that are decked out, particularly self-builds, vans that have already been designed, big vans, smaller vans, short wheelbase, long wheelbase vans, tiny caravans, all sorts of different things. And you kind of have to think about a lot of, are you going to use it every so often, like, one weekend a month, or are you going to get on the road and spend months traveling? Because the things that you need to consider, I've covered in a previous video that I've got on this page. So I bought the van and, like I said, had quite a bit of anxiety about driving a van, going to different places within that. You have to do a lot of research, and it's good to kind of consider where you're going to park, stop off, stay overnight, and where you're going to be possibly more safe at the beginning of your journeys. And then as your confidence grows, and you've done a few trips, then like most things, you start to settle into what starts to feel easier to do in comparison to when you start to get out on the road. So like I said, I had some nervousness about the van. I didn't really know much about the van. Is literally a mobile home. It's got a cooker, a fridge in there. It's got a heating system. So some of the first things I did after getting the van and getting it taxed and insured was getting the service checked. Did it need anything? And then I got a habitation check, and the habitation check covers I can't remember if it's about 120 different points, but the previous owners the last owner hadn't had it long, and the previous owner had had it a long time but hadn't used it that much. And so things like the gas pipe needed changing, that takes the gas that you use for the cooker, and to also keep the fridge going once you've charged it up using the electric hookup. So the habitation check was really good because he walked me through what the different things in the van actually were for and how to use them. And also checked all the electrics and checked lots of other things in the van. So if you want to find out more about habitation checks, I called a few people. They had a similar pricing system. And there's quite a few around, but it's really good to go on the Facebook van sites and find out people who've also done habitation checks, and whether or not they've got a list of everything that needs to be looked at when you get your van. So that's the sort of practical stuff. And then, like I said, I've covered that in other videos. So the key aspect for me, like I said, was my focus. My goal was getting out more on the road. I like staying in hotels. I've stayed in lots of different places in the UK since I started traveling again, when my son went to university around 2016, 2017. But there's something about having everything that you need wherever you pull up, where you can cook for yourself, make a coffee, and stay in one place for just a few hours a day or longer. And so that freedom and flexibility, I'd say, was probably the highest on the list. The freedom to travel, which is one of the most enjoyable aspects of a camper van life and living. Living in a van provides you with the ability to explore those new places without the constraints of a fixed schedule. So, like I said, initially I spent a lot of time researching. There was about 3 different camper van and campsite websites that I looked at. I looked at where the locations were, and I looked at kind of what would be the places that I would want to stay. So if I wanted to go and explore the cities, then you need to look at where can you park that's got park and ride, or a campsite that's within easy reach or accessible to other transport. If you want to leave your van for a few hours and you're hooking it up to, you've got tents and everything that you're putting up as well. So I spent a lot of time researching where the campsites were and the part of the UK they wanted to go to first. So some of the places I went to, had gone to before, that I visited, but expanded that. And you're looking now through the lens of where can I stay overnight? Where is it safe to stay? So one of the first trips I did was going down to Bournemouth. I've spent a lot of time down there. And I know the different beaches: Southbourne, Bournemouth, Westbourne. And then as you make your way towards Weymouth and Lyme Regis, I'd done a lot of that coast. But I hadn't been to every part of it, but I knew a bit of it was also hilly. And one of the beaches I really love, which you can drive right down onto the beach and park there for the day. I also spent some time on Hayling Island. I'd not been there for a long time, but there was a beach there where a lot of people with vans go, and there's some surfing that goes on. There's a cafe right next to on the beach, and so that was really nice to start that. I went with a friend. It's nice to go with somebody to share that experience with. A lot of people do van life solo, but on that journey I took a friend. So that was one of the first trips I did. There was also something about having the spontaneity, and because it was early February, a couple of nights I did stay in a hotel as well, and a few nights we stayed down on the coast. So the thing is, you can turn up somewhere with all your bags rather than getting off the train with suitcases, or dragging your suitcases into the hotel, finding your room, especially in some of the larger hotels where you've got a lot of corridors to walk down. You've got everything that you need that is contained within there. So you can turn up and stay for a few hours, or move on if it doesn't feel right. And I've done that quite a few times. The other aspect as well is there's lots of opportunities to spend time in nature. And on the way down to Bournemouth, you've got the New Forest, and rather than taking the usual roads into Bournemouth, I would take the trips instead and go through the New Forest. And it's got some beautiful places that I'd just not ended up before. And also, there's so many nooks and crannies of the UK that you can go and explore, that when you're not on the train, or you're not taking the usual routes, you don't normally come into contact with. So whether that is pulling up and camping, or leaving your van and going hiking, or simply sitting out next to a lake in nature — a lot of the campsites are based around lakes — then you can really access some lovely scenery. One of the campsites I stayed in was just on the outskirts of Lyme Regis. So you could leave your van there and then walk down into town. And actually, anyone that's ever drove to Lyme Regis, very few people who are even in cars will take the trip down into the town. It's right next to the beach, but it's really steep. So there is actually next to the campsite a free bus, so you can get down into Lyme Regis and then back up again. And it is really, really steep to walk up, so you have to be fairly fit. Okay, so that was about really spending a lot more time in nature. So I spent a lot more time by the sea, round the south coast, in Devon, in Cornwall, Dorset, and around the Bristol area. Spent a lot of my time. So of course you get exposed to a variety of landscapes, and also meet different people. And most of the van life community, when you meet them, are really friendly. So not only is it like when you have a dog and you're talking about how old your dog is and what breed of dog, a lot of van life people are really passionate about their vans, and they've chose it for a particular reason, put a lot of thought into it. And it's an extension, really, in most cases, of your own personality. So there's something around living more simply as well that can appeal to people, and having that sense of minimalism, because you really have to think about what you need. And in the UK, you can have all 4 seasons in one day. So often you do need some boots, some beach shoes, stuff to, your costume and that to swim in the sea, as well as boots and big coats and hats and scarves, because you might just be moving from one environment to the next. But it really makes you think about what you need. And I remember the first few trips that I did, where it was really nice just to wake up on a crisp, cool spring morning, put the cooker on and make a coffee. And I've got a cafetiere, I take fresh coffee, I take my oat milk. I've bought a little pan so I can heat up the oat milk. So it's almost like going to a coffee shop, but it's really nice. I make the coffee and you can just sit there in the silence. Because even if there's other vans there, it's often really quiet. People are usually quite respectful of the space and of people seeking out nature. So that sense of minimalism, of working out what is it that you really need. And if you don't feel too great and you've done a lot of driving, or you don't feel too well, it's good to know that you've got the basics. So I've always got porridge. I can make overnight oats. I have fruits, oat milk, coffee, teas, and the main things if I buy some food. And then on the few occasions I've bought actual food to make dinner, it might be steaks and chicken and salads, very easy thing. So it gets you to think about, I really don't want to put a pan on and boil water and make pasta and do rice and all that when I'm in the van. I do start to eat slightly differently as well. So not only do you start to think about what you need in the van, you also start to think about the clothes that you've got in your own house. If you're still doing van life and living in bricks and mortar, you can start to think about all of the kind of stuff that you've got in your house and whether or not you need it all. So in that process, I think I also started to declutter. I haven't got a lot of clutter, but I started to think about things in a more purposeful way. So I think there's a sort of expansion of how we really don't need that much when we're on the road. We just need the main things and access mostly to petrol, water, and heat. In January, anything under 10 degrees in a van, you're going to feel really cold in the middle of the night. For people who live full-time in a van, of course, they also have either no rent or mortgage to pay, or they've rented out their houses. And things like rent and utilities, you're lucky to be paying out a grand for that. Often people are paying about £1,500 before they even buy food, when you think about rent and food and utilities, just for everyday life. And for a lot of solo people, especially people who work on the road or have got jobs where they can be more mobile, it's certainly a more attractive thing to do, especially in the summer season. But in the winter and autumn seasons, it's a more hardier personality that is going to be able to manage van life full time, because as much as the Instagram pages of, being in the sunshine, being on the beach and traveling on the road, and as I do, play my music and enjoy that sense of freedom, it's very different when it's raining, when it's freezing cold, or you're running out of supplies, or your van breaks down. So we need to look at the realities of what it's like to actually either be in a van a lot of the time or live in it full time. And there is a big difference between living in a van full time and not having any house, because you've got to think about all sorts of things. But there are people on YouTube that cover what full-time van life looks like. So in terms of my experience, the community and social aspect was really interesting. I've met people, I've made friends, I've met people at the festivals I've gone to. I've gone to the yoga and wellbeing festivals across the UK, in Kent, near Warwick, down in Birmingham, down in Devon, and I've met people along the way, had conversations in coffee shops, and just had some really lovely conversations and experiences. And also, there is a community there. Lots of solo travellers will say, hey, I'm going to be down in Wales, or there's quite a few people going over to Spain at the moment, and say, do you want to join us on a convoy, or come to this campsite, and we're having a weekend of vannies getting together. So there's lots of different activities there for solo travellers. I also met a lot of women in similar circumstances to me. They'd got into their 50s, they'd worked all their lives and now wanted to consider just having that sense of freedom. They were either retiring or had more time on their hands and could take more time off from work, or even considering in that process, that transition. And it's good to connect with people and inspire them to go for something that they've maybe been thinking about doing, because there's no real risk to it apart from you put your money into, like we do with our cars and anything else that we buy over the years. I've given it a go. And if you do a season, you think, no, I don't want to live in a van, and I've been to places, but now this is what I'm looking at least you gave it a go. And for other people, once they start doing it, they're hooked. And I absolutely love the first aspect, which is just having that freedom to get in the van and go off wherever. And home is wherever you park it. So you've got your basics with you. You can make a drink, you make something to eat. We've always got, lots of bottles of water on board. You can stay in your van without needing to go to a campsite. For a lot of people, they go off grid, but if you haven't got solar panels and access to charging facilities, then that might minimize limits how long you can go off grid for. But it's about having access to all the belongings that you have, and where needed, as I said earlier, moving on to a different location. It's also about creating a space that you love, putting things around you that you enjoy, furnishing it to meet the needs and your taste, and enjoying that space. It can also be a place of inspiration and creativity. So I was spending a lot of time in my van when I got it, and was going off for a week, 10 days, 2 weeks sometimes. I think I've done about 3 weeks. That's about the maximum I've been in it at any one time. But also, vans the one that I've got is really well insulated. So I was doing a lot of work from the van. I was also recording some of the videos that I've done over the year. And that space to be in nature and be mindful and practice meditation and do my yoga, it's the right kind of environment to really allow the creativity to emerge as well. So if you are a creative, you know that there are certain time periods that you need in your day-to-day life where you can just absorb yourself, or absorb the environment, and start to connect with that inspiration as it arises. I've also been able to work from my laptop wherever I've parked up, which has been great. I think the other aspects as well, I think there's two sides of a coin when we think about mental health and well-being. So for a lot of us who value and love freedom and space and being able to go explore new places, it supports our mental health and well-being. It gives us that sense of vibrancy and purpose of living this really diverse life that we're here to experience. For a lot of people, being independent and solo is also an innate part of their personality, and choose to spend more time on their own than with people. But it can sometimes be an isolating or activity, a time of being on your own a lot and being alone. So it is important to know yourself fairly well as to how much time you like to spend on your own and how much time you like to spend with people, and what the sort of balance is for you. Because when you need to spend time with people, you might want to have certain locations that you can go to where you've got a chance of bumping into new people, or how you stay connected, that you've got your Wi-Fi, you've got Zoom, you've got your WhatsApp, and you can call people. And in particular, if you've had periods of your life where you've had some mental health issues, as we know with depression, people can remove themselves from people and work, and the capacity to reconnect can feel harder if we've allowed too much time to come through. So do make sure that you keep that contact with people, keep those connections going, so that it's much easier when you want to call someone up and say, hey, how's it going, what are you up to, do you want to join me, or just have a good chat, so that you've got that facility. It also can be a great way of reducing stress. So we know that, people who go and spend hours fishing like that, because they're out in nature, they're spending time, it's very still, and it's a really good way of reducing stress and anxiety, of being in those natural environments. And also leaving your van and going for a walk. I've visited some really nice beaches when I was in Devon last time, and I'd leave the van, for a few hours and just go walking, because some of them weren't always that close to the beach, and just go walking and just explore the local area. And it was really nice, because we know in psychology we often need to have novel experiences and new information that gives us that sense of awe and wonder and curiosity. And when I drove down to Weymouth once and decided to take the road to Portland, which is a little island just off the coast of Weymouth. And there's a road where you've got the sea on either side of the road, and you drive across that, and then you start to go uphill up to Portland. And it takes you, if you head towards Portland Bill, you go right to the top of Portland. And at a particular time, on that road, you get the view of the whole of Weymouth and the whole of Chesil Beach, and it's absolutely stunning. And on a sunny day, the light that is glowing on different parts of that beach and on the sea, and it's just it was the sense of awe I hadn't experienced until I took that trip. It was just absolutely amazing. And it's really nice you can have those experiences, because you don't know when you take a step out and do something new, just really what how you're going to experience it, what it's going to feel like. It also can enable you to have a digital detox and mindfulness. Now, I'm on my laptop a lot. I'm on my phone on and off. I like scrolling through roles on Instagram, especially the comedy ones and the music ones. But there are times we really need to unplug. So that's almost been forced at times, because my laptop tends to, I've always got too many tabs open. So it tends to, battery runs out after about 3 hours. So I know that I might have 3 hours and then the battery goes. And most of the time in the first few months, I didn't have any facility to charge it, and I didn't want to go to the local cafe sitting there for another hour. So it was sort of almost like enforced, knowing that I'd have a 3 hour stint to do all of the work that I could do and pack that in. If I'm doing something creative, working on my YouTube page, writing, whatever the activity that I was doing, I had a 3 hour window. And then I'd go for a walk, or do something else, sit in nature, get my camp chair out and sit on the campsite or sit next to the beach. So it's a really good way of changing some of your habits and thinking about how, we are constantly distracted. So how you can really capitalize on those moments in time. And also, with the British weather being so fickle, often I'd go down to Bournemouth and you could have a most amazing sunny day, and the next day it's absolutely pouring down and you're on the same beach. So you need to capitalize on the environment while you've got it, because you don't really know whether or not the weather forecast is going to be accurate the next day. So I started to change the way I did segments of work, so that I could then really enjoy those moments of time that were spontaneous. And on the other days, really thinking about, okay, what do I do if it is pouring all day? Sometimes it's just nice to stay in the van and watch some movies, and other times, I go and explore somewhere indoor markets. So that's around how we create mindfulness and presence. And presence and mindfulness is really key to our mental health and well-being. And I've been practicing yoga, meditation and mindfulness for quite a while now. And I have implemented and sort of integrated into my day-to-day system, regardless of where I am. I know that it's really important to keep those that focus going, of making sure that I have those pockets of time where where I slow down, switch off, unplug, and just be in the moment. And then just allow that really nice sense of beingness. And the more and more you build on that, the more and more your body's releasing good vibes, good chemicals, the calming part of your system's being activated, rather than being in that constant spin. And you are in a little bit of that spin when you're driving on the road, unless you're playing music that you like listening to, because you've got to be fully focused and aware because of the traffic and weather conditions. Okay, so also self-care practices. Now, the only thing that I do miss when I'm in my camper van is I love having a bath, and whether that is aromatherapy, Epsom salt baths. But in a camper van, you're either on a campsite and using their shower facilities, which the ones I've stayed at have been really clean and warm. But you've got to make sure that you've got one of those coats that has a towel. I don't know what they're called actually. A towel on the inside and waterproof on the outside. They are great for if you're doing any kind of camper van or camping, because when you go to the shower block, of course, you come out and it's warm in the shower block, but you've got to get back to the van. And also a decent bag with all of your toiletries in that you can access without, as it's on some occasions for me, just rolled everywhere. So it really gets you to think about how you utilize what you've got, how you set up your morning routine, and then if you're not on a campsite, how you're going to manage that. So I've got a sink in my camper van, and I can wash, and in the summer you can even get showers, portable showers that you can hook up that are quite easy to use, and you can even buy like a shower tent, which I'll be getting for the next lot of festivals next year. But it's all part of that fun, really, of adventure. Doing it in a tent when it's pouring down and being damp and cold, different story. But there's just something about being in nature and enjoying that. And I think that's what attracts a lot of people to camping and getting in their camper van. You can also really get quite healthy in terms of your nutrition. Your fridge is only going to cope with so much stored food, and mine actually does take quite a bit, but I've only got a small freezer compartment. So you do have to plan a bit more if you know you're on a trip and you might not have access to any shops locally of what you pick up and what you can store in your fridge for 2 or 3 days, because once mine's charged up, depending on how hot it is, it will keep food really cold for about 2 days. And in terms of nutrition, I started to buy things that were really easy to fry off, like peppers and mushrooms and spinach and broccoli and things like that I could fry off to go with any meat that I've got. I often take my blender with me. I've got protein juice. I have dates and figs dried and nuts. So if you're hungry at any time, if you've done a lot of hiking or anything like that, it's good to have access to those things. I've never really been good, never wanted really to buy convenience food. A lot of it I don't like. When you cook a lot of your own food, you're really sensitive to the amount of sugar and salt that's contained with other food. If I'm going to eat away and I'm near the beach, I really like getting fish and chips, If I'm going to do a lot of hiking, then having a fish and chip dinner at the end of the day is really good and tastes great. I think my physical activity increases most certainly when I'm out and about. I do a lot more walking. I love walking by the coast and walking in the hills overlooking the coast. So that really increases. It's harder to do yoga. I can actually do some yin yoga in my van. And if the tent is up, I can do yoga in that. And if the weather's warm enough to get out on the grass, and it's much nicer to do it on the grass than to do it on the beach. It's really quite challenging doing yoga on the beach because The dry sand just moves all the time. It's actually really important if you're driving a lot and you don't go to the gym, you don't do any form of exercise, is to make sure that you walk more and to do back stretching exercises, because you're often either hunched over the steering wheel in the van. And driving too much means that you can weaken those lower back muscles, just like when you're sitting at a desk all day. So you need to be really mindful of strengthening the back muscles, the stomach muscles, and doing the right stretches so that you don't start to get back problems. And I noticed, because the van just feels heavier to pull on the steering wheel, I would notice that my shoulders were aching. So I made sure at the end of every day, I was doing stretches to stretch out the shoulders, stretch out my hips, stretch out my lower back in particular. And the yoga then is more about strength based, unless I'm doing yin, and that's where you hold a pose for much longer so that you get a much deeper healing in that. So that is really key if you're going to spend quite a bit of time driving. I think everyone's got their own limit as to how much driving they can do. If I'm going to drive down to, say, Bournemouth, which is an hour and a half away, I wouldn't want to do there and back in a day unless I really, really had to. If I'm driving down to Devon, you need at least 3 to 5 hours. That's a lot of driving. So it's either stop on the way and stay at a campsite, or do that driving and then I spend a few days at the campsite or local and not really doing anything for a couple of days after that. So it's about recognizing your own limits, about how much you can drive before you get fatigued, and don't ever push it to the point where you're so fatigued that you just really feel like you need to sleep, because you're going to have to pull over and sleep. Otherwise, as we know, it gets dangerous. It's important as well that there are people who have gone into van life because their relationships have split up. And so it's important. There's a lot of online support now in the UK. We've got Samaritans that you can ring 24/7. We've got National Mind, and we've got Young Minds as well. And also these online therapy platforms where you can get that emotional support to help you through any difficult times. Because even if people can't find the answers to something, if you go to the Citizens Advice Bureau or solicitor, they can help you on the practical aspects of if you do need housing again, and help with benefits or any support when you're going through something. And the therapy can just help you get some things off your chest without having all the answers to it, and feel like that you're able to sort through any of the difficult feelings that you have about whatever's going on. So make sure you do get that, as well as what I said earlier, which is have some connections of people that you can contact. There's also, if you already experience anxiety, as I have on and off throughout my life, and then I get in the van and I was getting anxious, sometimes it helps to think about what's the worst that could happen. So if your van breaks down, have you got some spare cash to one side so that you can deal with any issues as they arise, or access to a credit card? Do you know people in different areas? Because the other aspect is you might know your local garage, but I had to think about other garages that I could access when my van broke down. I think it was my second trip, and I was just entering a little village in Honiton, Devon. And for some reason, they've got like 8 garages there. But the first 4 that I rang were full. And it was only on the 5th one that, bless him, he not only agreed to see the van, but also was able to chase down a part and fix that within a few hours. So it's also about trusting that things will work out, and that you've got a backup plan, that if you get stranded anywhere. And because your van is your home, you need to think about having a bag that you can take stuff with you if you need to stay somewhere overnight, and that you've got access to funds if you do need to stay in a hotel, if there is something and they can't fix it straight away. And I've also taken out cover with, I think it's Green Flag. I've got 2 covers, one for my car, which is a general breakdown cover, but the one I got for the van, actually, if you're going somewhere and you break down, it will get you to your destination, but it will also bring you back when you're ready to return. And I got that because I'm signed up to teach at some festivals, and so I really need to make sure that I get to the destination, and so that breakdown cover will assist you if that's what you need at the time. The other one is about humour and perspective. So things, yes, can go wrong. When I broke down once I was driving on the M3 and it was pouring down. It was, I wouldn't quite say it was a monsoon, but it was really heavy rain. And there were splashes from lorries coming everywhere. And I could feel the van starting to drag. And I don't know why. Um, and I had to make a decision. Do I stay on the M3 where sometimes you've not always got a hard shoulder, so it's even more terrifying if you break down in those places? And the dragging situation continued. So I decided to pull off on a slip road onto one of the main roads that go underneath the motorway. I pulled off, got to the traffic lights, and the van completely cut out. And let's just say it was fairly terrifying. And there were lots of vans behind me. Nobody got out. Nobody came to see if there was assistance. They started honking. So I went to a few vans behind and said, look, I've broke down. It wouldn't turn over. So I called the police because I was in an unsafe situation. And I sat in the van. And after about 10 minutes, I turned it over and the van started. So it was a case of either do I get back on the motorway, do the journey, or do I go to the local garage and see if I can find out what's going wrong with it, because even though it started, I still don't know what caused it to break down. It was a good 10 minutes I was sat at the junction for, and no one could get past me. So you have to just say, what can I do? It's over 3 ton, the van. There's no way I could push it. Could a few people push it? I don't know. I've not tried to push the van before. So they couldn't get past, and that's just sometimes what happens. And it's no good getting stressed. And at the same time, you've got to make sure you're safe. And that when I moved the van, if I could have pulled over to the side of the road, I wanted to come off that main road so that I was going to be safe in lay-by. And then I had to decide, do I call the breakout company? Or do I try and work out what this is? Because at that time, I didn't have that cover that got me to the venue and then got me back, and I was on the way to a trip. I was going to look at a property at the time. So yeah, I needed to be somewhere. So yes, it was frightening, and at the same time, you have to have some humour and perspective of what's the worst that can happen. How do I deal with it? If I do break down, have I got access to breakdown cover? Have I got a credit card that I can use? Have I got someone that I can call, so that you can deal with those stresses? Because there are those stresses of van life, and lots of people buy vans that are 10, 20 and 30 years old, and they might not have used all the mileage, but often they can have the original parts. And when I broke down, not that time, when I broke down previous time, I was just near a farm, and it was the water coolant light that came on. And that was when I called up the 4th of the 7 garages that were in the area, and they had one radiator. That was the first time that radiator had ever been changed, and the van is, I think it's 30 years old. It was 2004. Yeah, no, 20 years old. Yes, 20 years old. And so we get over it. We deal with it. Sometimes our worst nightmares can come into fruition, and sometimes they don't. And that's the thing. Anxiety is often about the future. It's about things we haven't planned yet. But you can have a backup plan, and often the backup plans work. And sometimes you just can't prepare for eventualities. But often it's fun, and you're out there and you're experiencing it. And after the mechanic got my van, he looked at it. I went to the coffee shop. It was in the afternoon. I was thinking, do I have to stay there overnight or not? I was about 30 miles from my friend's place. She couldn't get to me. And so I've got booking.com, and so I can look online and find somewhere to stay if I need to. And he said, just go and have a coffee. And he managed to find the only one radiator in the whole area for a petrol van, which is really unusual. So it worked out, but I didn't know it was going to work out. I didn't know what was causing the problem. But I did know that if the coolant runs out, there's a chance of blowing up your engine. So I knew that much. So it's good to know what you need to do to make sure that you don't do some serious damage to your engine. So overall, the key message is you're thinking about getting a camper van and you don't know what. So of course, as I said, do your research and work out what you need. And are you going for weekends away? Are you going for longer and you're going to festivals? So you might need an awning, especially if you've got children, because the one that I've got could fit easily 3 single beds, even 4 in there with a few bits. And you'd manage for 3 or 4 days camping up at a festival. If you want to go travelling and do the different routes, going around Scotland and go for a month, then you need to think about long term how you're storing in the van what you need for the amount of travel that you're doing. So if you're travelling 500 miles, you need to make sure you've got everything that you eat, the clothes that you need, all of that kind of thing. So you need to think about what is it that you're looking for and how often are you going to use it. If you're still working full time, the chances of using it once a month is there. Using it every week is less, unless you work online. And then you think about how can I manage my hours and also get to go out and visit places. So hopefully this has been helpful. It has given you food for thought. Leave in the comments below what it's meant to you over the years, and let's see what you share.